Catherine, as a former Secretary General of the EU Commission, you must be very interested in the current Brexit negotiations between the UK and the EU. You've just addressed the ITIC Council meeting and it was very informative. How do you see the current state of play?
I think we're still at the opening stages. I think the UK still hasn't decided to negotiate seriously. They're still at the stage where they want to have everything on their list and to make no concessions. And that's not the right attitude for a negotiation. You have to be prepared to give to get. Now, we will see Prime Minister May is making an important speech tomorrow. We will see, does she send the right messages, which would open the door to start the negotiations? Or is she still playing to the domestic audience rather than her negotiating partners?
And I suppose that the mood of the talks is very important, isn't it? I mean, that ability to concede ground in order to gain ground elsewhere, I mean, that's what a negotiation is all about.
It is, and especially in the EU, because it's built on compromise. They make huge efforts not to isolate anybody, to bring everybody on board, because it's like a family and because we have to live and work together permanently. And so when you have one partner that doesn't share that basic approach, it's much more difficult. But I think once the UK shows that it is ready to make some compromises and understands that leaving the EU, it will have to leave some of the benefits behind, then I think the negotiations can get down to work in earnest relatively quickly.
Because time is of the essence. I mean, there's a finite period that a negotiation can happen. I mean, I think it's March 2019. So the clock is ticking.
Yeah, very much so. 29th of March 2019, the UK will leave. So it's all about on what terms do they leave. Now, I do see some encouraging signs. I think there's a growing realisation in the British political system that there will be a transition period, maybe of 3 years, in which they will stay in the customs union. I hope that we can get them to see the benefit of staying in the single market as well. That would allow extra time to decide on the future relationship, while most of the ways in which we interact today would continue for a longer period.
So rather than a cliff edge, which we're all concerned about, there'll be that 3-year period where, if you like, the negotiations can continue before an ultimate deal is signed.
That's right. Now, the risk of everything collapsing is there, and it's not a small risk, but I just think the stakes are so big on both sides, for the UK and for the rest of the European Union, that there will be maybe an 11th hour deal, maybe a messy and complicated one, but we all have to work for that to happen.
Absolutely. Five to midnight is still within time. Is Brexit as big a concern for the EU bloc as it is, for example, for Ireland? I remember reading about the recent debate between Angela Merkel and Schulz, her opponent, the big TV political debate, and Brexit wasn't mentioned once.
No, simply it's not. It's of huge importance to Ireland, so it kind of dominates our discussion landscape. It's an issue for the other countries, but they are already moving on without the UK. And so what they are concentrating now is, where should the EU go next? What kind of EU do we want without the UK? And that's a debate that Ireland must be part of as well.
And the big concern from an Irish tourism perspective, I suppose there's two big concerns. One is aviation access and the importance of retaining aviation access between the UK and the EU bloc after Brexit, but also the common travel area and the importance of that for Irish tourism. Do you have any views on those areas?
I think the other 26 countries have been extremely well briefed and persuaded on the situation in Ireland and what the common travel area actually is. So I think that there's a lot of sympathy, support, understanding for that, and I think we will find a way of continuing them. So the detail has to be worked out, but I'm sure that there will be a happy landing there. On aviation, it is possible for non-EU countries to participate in the aviation system, but then they have to accept EU rules, which they will no longer be able to shape, and they will have to pay for access. So it will be possible, but it's for the UK to decide to choose.
Yeah. Do you see some people hold out the hope of a second referendum, reversing the decision? I mean, the Irish did it, or did a version of it before. Is that a possibility within the UK, or is that wishful thinking?
As of today, I don't see that. I'd love to, but I don't see it. I don't actually see much shift in public opinion in the opinion polls. I think it's going to be quite a while before the public in the UK realise the enormity of their decision, and that there's going to be a sort of slow, steady decline in their standard of living because of this decision. But it won't come quickly. Now, maybe if we have a 3-year transition period after March 2019, then I think that a lot more clarity would be available. And who knows, it's a long time to speculate out that far. But there isn't a tradition of having referenda in the UK, and I think to think of a second referendum is probably, in today's terms, not politically possible. But let's see what the UK Parliament makes of the final deal when there is a final deal on the table.
Absolutely. They say a week is a long time in politics, and certainly a year or 2 years is an eternity in politics, so who knows. Catherine, thank you so much for your insights and observations.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.